Well, over 4 months have passed since Russia launched its war on Ukraine. Since then, thousands of residential buildings have been shelled, leaving over 12 million people displaced. The first residential block hit in the Ukrainian capital city, Kyiv, was the home of our BBC Ukrainian colleague, Olga Malchevska. She was on air with me as she saw the pictures for the first time. She's since returned to Kyiv to see what's left. This is her story.
February 25th, the second day of the Russian war in Ukraine. It was supposed to be another day of reporting, but suddenly my private life turned public. I could not imagine that actually at 3 a.m. London time I would find out that actually my home is bombed.
And you're talking about that actual building?
Yeah, and this actual building is my home. 3 months later, I've got a chance to go back home. I dreamed of this moment from the first day of the war. I've seen the images of my bombed home 100 times, but nothing could prepare me to see it in reality.
Oh my God.
Over 100 families were forced to leave their homes in this building that day. This is the place I saw on video in the BBC studio when I was commenting there. Then the camera turned there. Here is my balcony with Ukrainian flag above it. Despite the risk of collapse, many families are still living here. Let's go. Come in. My uncle has never left our home. This is the first time I've seen him since the beginning of the war. Oh my goodness.
Look at this glass. The same amount was in your mother's room. It covered her bed. If she had stayed here, all of it would have hit her. I was lifted into the air by the impact, even though I was in another room.
This is my mom. My mother was sheltering that night in a cellar. I've since managed to bring her to the UK. But the impact on other families was even more devastating. A family of 4, including 2 children, used to live in these flats on the first floor. They left a day before the blast, but their neighbors next door could not escape. Vlad lost his mother in the shelling.
I pushed my brother out of the window. Our mother couldn't walk. I carried her out through the window as well. She was still alive, but then she probably choked from the smoke.
So painful to see how everything was destroyed. Years of efforts and of care, of love which was put here, and it just smashed in a second. My home is one of thousands shelled, and my story is one of millions. Victims of a war that has left around a third of the population homeless. Olga Malchevska, BBC News, Kyiv.
Well, I'm pleased to say Olga is back in the studio with me now. Olga, thank you so much for coming back, and thank you so much for joining us then that day at the time. And I just need to remind everyone that we had you in the studio quite by chance. We were talking about the war in general. You were talking us through the developments because the war was the invasion was on its second day. And then we just happened to get pictures of an apartment block which had been hit. And then the rest is what we saw in that package.
Yes, well, it's quite true. I mean, who could think, right, that day? I remember when you invited me to the studio a day before, when the war just started. I was prepared to talk about everything, I thought so. But then when I was getting ready to get to the studio in the morning, I found out. I actually saw the pictures from my neighbors of the bombed building, and I started to check the address, and I saw my address, and I still couldn't believe.
Yeah.
But I saw just a couple of, stills, and they were of the building in fire, and I still, deep inside myself, I couldn't process that it was my home, actually, and that that building, and I couldn't also understand which part of that building was affected. So when I saw that footage in your studio, it was actually for the first time when I saw it, and for the first time when I saw actually my flat there, and obviously it was a very dramatic moment.
And you had mentioned the words, "I can't believe it's my home that's being bombed." Now, at the time, I wasn't sure what specifically you were meaning, whether you meant your country, your city, your neighbourhood. And I had no idea that you were watching your actual building. And that's why I asked you to talk us through those pictures, to see what you were going to say, because I had a suspicion you might be about to say it was your actual home. I couldn't be sure, but both of us were completely and utterly shocked when you said that. And I mean, for you, the emotional effect of seeing that live on air. So many people who saw this video around the world, it went so viral, have wondered, what was that like for you?
Well, to be honest, I think both sides. I was in the reporter's mode because I'm reporter, BBC reporter in the studio, so I have to comment. And that's probably made me think clearly, as much clearly as it was possible that moment. But obviously when I saw my balcony there, I couldn't keep my emotions. And I just, you know, it was two parts of emotions. From the one hand, I tried to verify the place. From the other hand, I tried to keep my tears. And yeah, obviously
and that was actually the first apartment block to be hit in Kyiv on the second day of Russia's invasion. Yeah. So the chances of that being your home are just absolutely extraordinary.
Yes, absolutely. And then I was crucified by the Kremlin's propaganda, saying everywhere that it was staged, that it was not possible to have a BBC reporter in the studio right that moment when her building was bombed. And obviously I can't understand how such coincidence was happening. Other people were saying that I was doing PR actions, you know. It's absolutely painful, but I think, I mean, you cannot do much about it. When you're a reporter, you have to be prepared to have attacks on social media. I'm pretty sure you know what it means as well. But I think we just should focus on the reporting.
And to get that sort of online reaction, telling you it was a lie, on top of the emotions that you were feeling, is quite a lot to deal with. But the positive reaction also was incredible. I mean, that tweet of the clip went viral. It was millions of views.
From your account?
And on the BBC account, it was millions within 24 hours. Could you have imagined the level of interest and the level of sympathy and affection that came out for you and the people of Ukraine?
To be honest, that moment I didn't think about any kind of reaction, because I was really focused on what was going on in the country and on the casualties, people dying. Absolutely nobody could expect that they would start to bomb Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, at that moment. And I didn't think about the reaction. And then when you called me and said, did you check actually the Twitter and the website? And I was quite shocked, to be honest, because I couldn't expect that kind of reaction. But what really made me feel optimistic and inspired me a lot is the reaction of the British audience and international audience, and people trying to understand how it was. And also I felt a bit guilty that I became a kind of a face of that, despite millions of people affected, because my story is just one of millions of stories of Ukrainian people. And why I agreed to go there and to feel my home, it's only because I wanted to say that is only a little story of the whole population suffering, and there are people who suffered much more. If you could see my neighbors there in that package, they lost their mother, and many of them lost their flats completely. So it is not possible to compare drama, if you can say so. Obviously, everybody's personal drama is the biggest for them, but many more Ukrainians suffered much more.
But your story did symbolize what so many people were then to face in Ukraine. Olga, and of course so many news organisations around the world were using your interview that day. Your mother was in Ukraine until March. You went back to get her. Tell us a little about that reunion.
Well, it was a very difficult, I would say, special operation to get her out of there, because she, well, that night, I didn't know, when I was in your studio, I didn't know where she was still. And luckily, she was sheltering in the, literally in the cellar of one of our neighbors, because our block of flats didn't have any kind of basement. And that's how she stayed alive. But she left our home an evening before that, and she had just a little handbag with her passport. And she had her passport just because it was stated as a martial law in the country that you must bring your passport with yourself wherever you go. And imagine, she left our home an evening before with a handbag with her passport, and it was February, and it was Ukrainian winter, and it was quite zero, minus, I don't remember exactly what temperature it was, but it's quite low. And she didn't have any clothes with her, nothing, literally. And she spent in that cellar around over a week, I think. And then it was not possible to leave the city as well, because they were still bombing Kyiv and there were Russian tanks around, and the road was very dangerous. So,
but eventually you went to the Slovakian border and you met your mum, and this is the pictures of you now reunited. She's living with you here in the UK for now.
Yeah, we have a, how to say, happy ending, I hope. Well, yes, but her documents are still in the process. Luckily, she had her tourist visa open to the UK, so that's because she was visiting me for the New Year, so that's how I was able to take her out of Ukraine quite quickly. But it did take her around a week of an evacuation route, and she had to stand in the train for 12 hours without even a drop of water.
Olga, we are so sorry we have to leave it there, but we thank you so much for coming in and telling us a little of your story from then and from now. Olga Malchevska from BBC Ukrainian, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen.